Welcome to Preventing Web and Email Server Attacks, another webinar in our incident response series providing cybersecurity awareness and best practices. We're excited to be here today to cover email and server attacks, as well as some of the best practices to mitigate those attacks. First, we'll cover some logistical items and then we'll get started. I'm John. I'm a senior security consultant for Motorola Solutions supporting DHS CISA. I have supported government cybersecurity programs for over 12 years, including 4 years with the CISA cybersecurity training team. I've also worked in adult learning and cybersecurity course development and have served in the United States Navy, where I perform systems integration and tactical team training. My colleague Adrian is a cybersecurity consultant for Motorola Solutions with more than 16 years of experience in the cybersecurity realm. Over the last 14 years, he has supported the DoD community and the United States government's efforts in cyber defense, as well as supporting various DHS training and awareness programs over the past 8 years. Adrian has served in the United States Air Force and is a retired cyber protection team member. Okay, so what's our agenda today? In today's session, we'll first review the essential information you'll need to identify, prevent, and respond to web and email server attacks using the Identify, Mitigate, and Recover framework. During the second half of the course, we will apply those core concepts and the IMR framework to review real-world cases of documented web and email server attacks against the Department of Health and Human Services and Sony Entertainment, a major motion picture studio. And then we'll finish up with a recap of today's topics, as well as some resources that you can use for further research. All right, so the course provides key awareness and understanding of web and email servers, points of vulnerability, and best practices for prevention and mitigation that enable you to protect yourself and your organization from web and email server attacks. We'll also use the Identify, Mitigate, and Recover framework to define what constitutes a web or email server attack, review cyber hygiene best practices that reduce the chance of attacks, and describe organizational impacts. We'll also take a look at key steps to prepare your organization to respond effectively. And we'll also provide real-world examples illustrating the impacts of successful web and email server attacks and the target organization, how the target organization was impacted, and their response and recovery. So Adrian, can you tell us a little bit more about web and email servers?
Well, good afternoon and good morning to everyone out there joining us today. Thank you for joining us. And so I'll kind of provide some brief background regarding the two types of services that are available. And so web and email servers are the invisible infrastructure that allow you and everyone else in the world to access the internet, interact with your favorite websites, and communicate virtually through electronic messaging and email. Just think about that. So can you imagine not having Google or some type of search engine to use to research or to help you and assist you in doing your job? You know, back when my early days in the military, one of the things that I noticed is there were go-to individuals that you would have to go to, and they would work as subject matter experts or SMEs to provide you information because the internet hadn't really taken off like that, or it wasn't available and accessible, and you couldn't pull up information as quickly. That's not the case so much now in today's world. We use the internet pretty much for everything. And so these web and email servers are the workhorses of the internet age, and their ubiquity across the internet make them easy targets for cyber threat actors. A web server is software and hardware that uses hypertext transfer protocol, or what's referred to as HTTP, among other protocols to process requests that are made over the World Wide Web. Web server software governs the way in which users access web content by using domain names. And as hardware, a web server is a computer that must contain web server software in order to process website-related files like hypertext markup language or HTML, any images that are being viewed, and JavaScript files. Users would not be able to use or access the websites without web servers to display, access, store, process, or even deliver the web content. Now, email servers, on the other hand, are simply mail servers, which is basically a computer system that sends and receives email. It acts like a virtual post office. The server stores incoming mail for distribution to local users, as well as sending out outgoing messages. An email server is a computer with mail transfer agents, or MTA functions, and mail can be exchanged between email servers running special software and configured with standardized email protocols. Now, in many cases, web servers and email servers can be combined into a single machine. Now that we have an understanding for what they are, there are many ways that an attacker can target web and email servers. For web servers, data sent over HTTP is vulnerable to interception, manipulation, and impersonation, particularly if it's not encrypted. This data can include browser identity, website content, maybe search terms, and other user-submitted information. Unencrypted HTTP connections can create a privacy vulnerability and potentially expose sensitive information, which is much, I'm pretty sure we've all heard about these type of vulnerabilities and compromises at some point over the last few years. Now, in regards to email servers, attackers can spoof the domain of a reputable organization and send an email that looks to be legitimate email. Other organizations or members of the public or internal employees might receive spoof emails, perceive them to be from an authoritative source, and act on them. Attackers may spoof a domain to send a phishing email that looks like a legitimate email. And at the same time, users transmitting data via unencrypted HTTP protocol, which does not protect data from interception or alteration, are vulnerable to eavesdropping, tracking, and modification of any data.
All right, thanks for that, Adrian. At this point, let me just ask a question here, and you can answer me in the chat pod if you would. Give me an example of a common server attack. Example of a common server attack. Denial of service, DDoS. Okay, distributed denial of service. Okay, lots of denial of service attacks. XSS, okay. DDoS SQL injection. Perfect. All right, you guys are all over it here. Perfect. Blue screen. Okay. Viruses, CSS. All right, excellent. Excellent. So there are a lot of different server attacks out there, but let's take a look here at some of the most common ones. Now, the common types of web server attacks include things like side channel attacks and SQL injection, malware, cross-site scripting, all those types of things. Now, side channel attacks attempt to break cryptography by using information leaked by hardware, performing the cryptographic process instead of focusing on the cryptographic algorithm itself. Okay, and this can be done through a number of different ways, like monitoring the power consumption, electromagnetic emissions, or even the sound of a user's keystrokes. Now, SQL injection, that aims to modify databases and extract valuable information from your server by placing malicious code in SQL statements on a web page. And malware involves placing harmful software into your database. Usually the software includes viruses or ransomware that can destroy your data. And then cross-site scripting is a kind of injection breach in which the attacker injects malicious scripts into otherwise benign and reputable websites. But as you mentioned here in the chat pod, denial of service, or what we call DOS, or distributed denial of service, or DDoS, attacks are most prevalent types of server attacks that we'll look into here over the next couple of slides. All right, let me see a show of hands here. Quick show of hands. Has your department or agency ever been a victim of a denial of service attack? Okay, wow, quite a few of you. Okay. So we have some firsthand experience here in the audience today. That's excellent. All right, thank you for that. Quite a few of you, actually. All right. So denial of service attacks are one of the most common types of attacks. And a DDoS attack floods a network server with traffic in an attempt to shut down the network or the service. And it does this by overwhelming the target network with illegitimate requests. And as the junk requests are processed, the server eventually becomes unavailable. Now, in the case of a DDoS attack, requests are spammed to the target IP address, which causes a strain on the system and ultimately makes an online service unavailable. And motivations for these types of attacks can be financial or economic benefit, ideological beliefs, intellectual challenge, cyberbullying, and any other number of cyber crimes that are out there. So who is susceptible to a DDoS attack? Well, anyone hosting a web or email server connected to the internet is susceptible to DDoS attacks. And DDoS attacks are often targeted at web servers of high-profile organizations, such as trade organizations, government entities, media companies, commerce, banking institutions, places like that. Okay, so however, you don't have to be a huge corporation or government entity. As long as the server is connected and can receive legitimate requests from users, it can also be targeted by attackers. So even if the attack doesn't result in the loss or theft of vital information, mitigation can take a lot of time and a lot of money. DOS attacks are often used in parallel to other types of attacks to act as a distraction. So the impact of distributed denial of service attacks, or DDoS attacks. Distributed denial of service attacks occur when multiple machines are used to attack a single target. And this, usually requires a botnet, or they're usually utilizing a botnet in this case. And a botnet is a cluster of hijacked internet-connected computers that are meant to carry out large-scale attacks. So a DDoS attack allows exponentially more requests to be sent, which increases the power of the attack. And also, attribution is very difficult because the true source of the attack is much harder to identify. Now, DDoS attacks have increased as more and more internet accessible devices come online via the Internet of Things, or what we call IoT devices. And IoT devices are vulnerable to compromise because typically they have weak passwords and poor security in general. So Adrian, tell us a little bit about some of the impacts of these attacks.
All right, and so some of the biggest impacts that I can think of related to DDoS attacks would be loss of consumer trust. Along the lines of, can we trust this? Can we trust this band to provide the service that we're looking for? Theft of intellectual property, maybe even a threat of a malware infection. Obviously, we can think of the financial loss. So, loss in e-commerce due to down or delayed websites, maybe resource-intensive mitigation efforts, loss of productivity because now your staff has to focus on resolving the issue versus to provide a service available to customers. If that's what the kind of business that you're operating. And then finally, the lasting damage to a company's reputation. That could have negative consequences for customer loyalty. So if you can think of some of the industries like gaming or some type of hosting platform, maybe even a data center or financial services, they rely heavily on the reputation for service availability. So, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the first one that I mentioned, the loss of consumer trust. So if a customer can't trust that a vendor will be consistently online and available, they can easily spread the word online, maybe some type of reviews provided, or other social media platforms, which are channels, which is very important in today's age. That information can spread, and then from that point, people take those words and then say, okay, well, through word of mouth, I don't want to deal with this company, and so that can be very damaging. All right. So now that you have understanding for what a DDoS or DOS is, let's talk about some of the signs to look for in regards to this type of attack. So a DOS attack overwhelms the target network through traffic, flooding it with requests. This causes strain on the target server or network, rendering an online service unavailable to users. It can also deny access to users such as employees, account holders, members of the resource or service. And then the best way to detect and identify a DOS or DDoS attack is via network traffic monitoring and analysis, right? I think it's key to know that you have to have some type of baseline of what your normal traffic is. And so if you're able to understand that you see spikes in the network on certain days or at a certain point in time that's not normal, that's usually a tipping point there to be able to say, okay, what's going on? Why are we seeing such an impact on our network and increased bandwidth spikes? And so these signs that could indicate your network is being targeted by a DOS attack might include things like technical problems with the network, usually slow network performance, unavailability of websites, maybe files of websites that open slow, maybe even the failover of your firewall and backend systems, if you have some type of load balancing mechanism in place, or maybe even overloaded network security solutions. So all these are things that you can use to identify, and I think it's key once again to kind of hit upon the point of network monitoring. All right, and so the following steps are key to preventing it and mitigating DOS attacks and should be in place in the case of an adverse event. So I'm going to kind of just highlight some of the things that you see on your screen. And so first, you want to develop a DOS response plan, and this plan should include sections such as systems checklists, response team, notification and escalation procedures, and a list of internal and external contacts. The worst thing you could do is, in the event of a DOS attack, have your staff not know what to do and how to respond. You want to make sure that there's at least something that they can work off of to go and have a game plan to address that issue. Number two, you want to secure your network infrastructure and with advanced intrusion prevention and threat management systems, which combine firewalls, maybe some type of VPN solution, anti-spam methods, content filtering, load balancing, and other layers of DOS defense mechanisms. Three, you want to have a network security best practices, which include implementing complex passwords that change on a regular basis, anti-phishing methods, and secure firewalls that allow little outside traffic. And obviously, this is going to depend on your business functions and how you operate on your day-to-day. Number four, you want to maintain strong network architecture with redundant network resources or some type of failover plan. That way, if one server is attacked, the others can handle the extra network traffic. Five, if it's possible, you want to leverage the cloud. It's likely the cloud has far more bandwidth and resources than a private network does. And six, you want to understand the warning signs. Once again, you want to be able to monitor, know what's, when you see anomalies on the network, you want to know what the symptoms are, like unavailable websites, slow networks, or other unexplained technical problems. And you want to make sure that it's being reported. Now, if you suspect that you're being targeted by a DOS attack, contact your network administrator to begin mitigation procedures. Your administrator can determine whether it's a service outage or a degradation is due to maintenance or other in-house network issues. So hopefully that information is being relayed to the staff. I know in my times in working in different organizations, there would be a message that would be sent out, hey, we're going to take the network down from these hours to do maintenance, so don't report this information. This is scheduled maintenance. So anything outside of that should be reported. You can also contact your internet service provider to find out if there's an outage on their end, or if the network is the target of an attack, then you are an indirect victim. They may be able to advise you on an appropriate course of action. And then finally, if you're the responding organization, you want to enact your DDoS response plan.
All right, so identifying the signs of server attacks. You may notice that there are overlaps between the signs of a DOS attack and other types of web and email server attacks. And this is to be expected since DOS attacks are one of the most common types of server attacks. Now, the purpose of many attacks is to cause disruption and harm to the organization. And some of the symptoms that we've covered may indicate that you've been infected with malware, which would allow an attacker to take control over workstations and servers. You may also notice spam and phishing emails being sent to users across your enterprise. Spam emails can really disrupt user productivity, utilize IT resources, and be used as a distribution mechanism for malware. Phishing is the use of deceptive social engineering, which is meant to trick individuals into responding to the email and disclosing sensitive information. Slow or inaccessible emails or other network resources might also be an indicator. All right, impact of web and email server attacks. Some of the impacts of not properly securing your web and email server can include things like unauthorized access to data, which can cause financial and legal and reputational damage to an organization. Adrian mentioned that a little bit earlier. Threat of data leakage. Personal data is one of the key targets for hackers, and when an email is sent via the internet, it goes through unprotected communication channels in which passwords, usernames, and messages themselves could be intercepted and cause reputational, financial, and legal damage. Another one is spam. This is one of the biggest problems when it comes to email. To prevent this threat, you need to use content filters, which can be installed either on the mail server or on a proxy application to protect access to the server. It's essentially a firewall. And excessive spam can burden inboxes, again, lower productivity, and risk financial damage if a malicious email slips past security measures. So if an individual takes an action, clicks a link, downloads a file, an attacker can access your network pretty easily. And then there's also the threat of malware. Both servers and email clients are susceptible to malware. When an email server isn't infected, the stability of the whole system is compromised, and integrity and privacy of personal data are threatened. And malware can also spread among email clients, mostly due to infected attachments, and cause significant financial and reputational damage to an organization. And then, finally, last but not least, the result is almost always poor server performance and stability.
All right, so how do we mitigate and prevent these type of server attacks? So first, I think it's great to have an incident response plan, and this can help organizations limit the damage to the computer networks and minimize work stoppage. Then you want to identify key assets. It may be cost prohibitive to protect the entire enterprise. Before creating a cyber incident plan, an organization should determine which of its data, assets, and services warrant the most protection. So in the federal government, we call these high value assets, or HVAs. Then you want to be able to analyze detected problems and make an initial assessment of the threat. Once an attack or breach is identified, it's critical to assess the nature and scope of the incident. It's also important to determine whether the incident was a malicious act or maybe something due to maybe internal technical glitch. The nature of the incident will determine what kind of assistance the organization will need and what type of damage and remedial efforts may be required. Once you get to that point, then maybe you, in some cases, depending on how you operate, you want to engage with law enforcement before an attack. Having a pre-existing relationship with federal law enforcement officials can help facilitate any interaction relating to a breach. It will also help establish a trusted relationship that cultivates bi-directional information sharing that is beneficial to both the organization and law enforcement. And then lastly, you want to have a post-attack plan of action. You want to establish procedures addressing what steps you need to take after an attack, because we know it's not just the attack that you have to consider, it's the after effect, so the steps after that, maybe getting systems online or maybe recovering. And so this should include identifying who is responsible for different elements of an organization's cyber incident response, having the ability to contact critical personnel at all times, knowing what the mission critical data may be, understanding networks or services should be prioritized, and how to preserve data related to the incident in a forensically sound manner, because there may be legalities associated with that. And then finally, you want to stay informed about new and existing threats, and that's why that information sharing can be key, especially within the same industry. Maybe there's threat actors that are focused at certain industries and they're doing the same type of tactics and techniques against them. That way you can be heavily protected or do your best to protect your information. And so an organization's awareness of new or commonly exploited vulnerabilities can help prioritize its security measures. All right, so now we're going to talk about responding to an attack. So this is the action that you should take. And so before I get too far in detail with this slide, I do have a question for you. You can just respond by raising your hand. How many of you have an incident response playbook or incident response plan that you would use in the event something happened? All right, great. I'm seeing a lot of hands going up and responses in the student chat, so this is great. I think that's one of the first steps to be able to identify, and much that we talk about in this class, because you want people to be able to know what to do. All right, thank you for that. And so the incident response process starts with a declaration of the incident, which, as you can see by the dark blue color on the slide, it's part of the detection and analysis phase. Declaration in this context refers to the identification of an incident as well as communicating it to the agency network defenders. You want to make sure everyone's aware. Succeeding sections, which are organized by phases of the incident response, or IR lifecycle, describe each step in more detail. Many of the activities are in sequence and may continuously occur and evolve until the incident is resolved. So what you see is basically a flow chart, and this flow chart illustrates incident response activities in terms of the IR phases. Appendix B of the Cybersecurity Incident and Vulnerability Response Playbooks provide a companion checklist so that you can track activities to completion. And these playbooks were written with the federal, civilian, executive branch agencies in mind, but are an excellent guide for any agency to use in creating your own response plan. So this is basically a reference point for many of you. All right, I see some of the responses say work in progress. And so there's, at least you understand that you need one. And so that's great to know. All right, we've come to the point in our course today where we'll take a few minutes to check what you've learned. And so I'm going to kind of go over each one of these questions. What I'll do is let you respond. After you respond, I'll broadcast the results, and we can talk about why the correct answer is the correct answer. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the first one. Once again, once you see the answer, all you got to do is select. You don't have to, there's no submit button, just click on whatever your option you want to select. Wow, look at those answers coming in. Give it another minute or so. All right, I think we've come to a point where I can now broadcast these results so you can see what your classmates are selecting. All right, based upon the totals we have right now, looks like 95% of the class is selecting all of the above. And that is correct. So all of the above are consequences of a DOS attack. And so when service is denied, loss of revenue is pretty much assured, not to include the cost of recovering from the attack. Theft of intellectual property can also be a result, particularly if the attackers escalate privileges or move laterally through the system. Maybe that's a target of theirs, and that's why they're attacking you. Loss of trust is also a concern. I kind of provided some examples in some industries. And if internet customers cannot be assured their purchases are secure, they will purchase from other online vendors, which thus causing you loss of revenue. All right, so all of the above for the first one. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our second one. All right, and once again on this one, all right, I'll give this just a few minutes and I'll broadcast the results again. All right, so we'll go ahead and broadcast these results. It looks like 99% of the class is saying option, the fourth option here. All right, so let's look at these. Faster than normal loading of websites. So which item best describes a sign of DOS activity on your network? So faster than normal loading of websites. So that's usually not associated with a DOS attack because, you know, they're usually going to cause some latency on the network. Backend systems such as file servers operating at normal capacity. Once again, that's more of an optimum, so that would be probably a negative on that. Network security solutions quarantine a file. Well, that's usually not a sign of a DOS activity on the network. And so the one that provides the best option and answer is unavailability of a particular website or a specific website. So that would be that option there. It looks like 99% of you had that right. So good job. And so that's the fourth option. All right, let's go ahead to our third question of the day. And you guys are doing great on this. Definitely you're paying attention, or you have a lot of background information in regards to protecting web servers and email servers. All right, let me go ahead and broadcast the results. So once again, you can see what you're selecting. And it looks like at this point, 95% of the class is saying all of the above in regards to this question. So let's look at the question. Which of the following is a proactive step to take for mitigating or preventing a web or email server attack? Wow, this is pretty interesting. So here we have an incident response plan. I think we talked about that as a possible one of the first steps to take so that your staff can be ready in the event of an attack or responding to an incident. Identifying key assets, or what we call in the federal government high value assets, or HVAs. That's another one that we discussed, and so that's included in that as well. Make an initial assessment of the threat. And so once again, that's another step that needs to be taken. That way you can have some type of situational awareness of what's going on. And so the last option is all of the above, which I think are key in regard to this. So the answer here is all of the above. And so every system should have as I mentioned, should have some type of security plan. You want to make sure that all the steps that we have identified here would be proactive steps in the event that you need to mitigate or prevent a web or email server attack. Okay. It looks like someone there says B and C are part of A. Exactly. In most cases, that should be identified in your incident response plan. So I do agree with that. And good point to make. All right. I'll go ahead and end this, and we'll get back to our presentation.
All right, thanks, Adrian. Appreciate that, and hopefully everybody had a chance to answer those questions. So let's take a look now at some case studies. And in this section, we're going to review a couple of case studies of real-world situations in which the Department of Health and Human Services and Sony Pictures Entertainment were affected by a web or email server attack. And these incidents reflect the spectrum of best case and worst case scenarios for the respective organizations affected. And while some of these aren't exactly current, they are really stellar examples of all of the things that can go wrong when you have an email or a web server attack. So let's take a look here at the first one, which is the Health and Human Services. In March of 2020, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services suffered a cyber attack on their network, and it was aimed at overwhelming the agency's servers. And it's suspected that foreign actors were attempting to exploit the initial COVID-19 crisis to promote their anti-American goals. So what was the attack vector? So the attack was labeled as a campaign of distribution and disinformation, which aimed to undermine the U.S. response to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the details of this cyber attack at HHS are similar to a number of other reports about foreign disinformation campaigns that were designed to spread fear and panic during the pandemic. Now, the attackers targeted a public-facing website with their DDoS attack at the same time as a number of reports related to COVID-19 quarantines were coming out. So if successful, the public would have been unable to access and view legitimate information published by HHS related to COVID-19. So Adrian, tell us a little bit about the impact of the attack.
All right. So HHS had put additional protections in place in response to COVID-19. And the attack overloaded the HHS servers with millions of hits over several hours. However, the attack did not succeed in significantly slowing down the agency's network since they were well prepared in advance. The extra precautions didn't allow the attack to succeed, and there was no penetration or degradation of network performance as a result. Now, the attack was noticed by agency staff due to significant increase in activity on the network. So thankfully, they were monitoring and they were watching the events that were going on. In the weeks prior, CISA and HHS were able to mitigate and even prevent attacks by increasing cyber preparedness across HHS and other agencies. This included things like enhanced monitoring, issuing recommendations as agencies shifted to a telework remote model, and identifying and protecting important systems that supported the COVID-19 response effort. Now, after investigation and analysis, it was determined that there was no penetration into and no significant degradation of the HHS network. And while it was suspected that foreign state actors were involved in the attack, the U.S. administration has not confirmed who was responsible.
All right. So let's take a look now at our next case study, which highlights the damage that a successful cyber attack can have on an organization, financially, operationally, and reputationally. Now, hackers broke into the network of one of the big 6 major movie studios. In this case, it was Sony Entertainment. And they stole a large number of confidential documents and materials and posted the information online. Now, the leaked information included at least 5 full-length movies, detailed personal identifiable information for thousands of employees, tens of thousands of email exchanges, and confidential information regarding lawsuits and other major financing deals. Now, the attackers used the stolen information as ransom, and they were demanding that the studio cancel the release and distribution of a specific movie. And the studio did cancel the film release, but as often happens with ransom cases, the leaks didn't stop. The studio was still hit with a barrage of costly and embarrassing revelations about the company and its executives. Now, the movie in question was later released, but quashing the initial rollout wound up costing the studio an estimated $75 million, along with other financial costs, and also major harm to their reputation. So now it's still unclear how the malware was introduced to the studio's network, but it is likely that someone was targeted with a spear phishing email, which then granted access to the system. Now the hackers then escalated privileges and took control of the mail server and Active Directory. From there, the hackers pretty much owned the system. Okay, so expert consensus attributes an unidentified individual with insider access to the network as instrumental to the attack's success. Now in 2018, a Department of Justice criminal complaint was unsealed, which charged a single North Korean citizen acting as a member of a government-sponsored hacking team known as the Lazarus Group, with conspiracy to conduct multiple destructive cyber attacks. So, Adrian, again, can you tell us about some of the impacts of this attack?
Definitely. I think we've had a couple people comment in the student chat regarding they remember this case, and so it's definitely, as you can see, the exposure it did receive. So in regards to this hack, the hack revealed confidential information on financing, casting, and pre-production costs that forced the studio to scrap or alter plans for numerous major film projects. It also included information on hundreds of employee credentials and details on how to assess staging and production servers, including a master asset list mapping the location of the company's databases and servers around the world. The documents also included a list of routers, switchers, and load balancers, and administrator of usernames and passwords. This information basically gave the attackers complete control of the network before they were discovered. Now, all of this forced the studio to rebuild their entire network as a part of the recovery, and the studio said in the earnings report that the hack would cost roughly $35 million in investigation and remediation costs over the next fiscal year following the incident, and agreed to pay $15 million to employees who were affected by having their PII leaked. And so, in regards to PII, that's personal identifiable information. This incident, in combination with previous cyber incidents, caused significant damage to the company's reputation. So once again, we can see one of those signs that or symptoms that we talked about earlier. In addition to the initial monetary cost of the PII, the hacks brought to light embarrassing details of workplace culture. To recover from these allegations, a comprehensive and costly image rehabilitation was undertaken to address these problems.
So how was the attack identified? Well, unfortunately, employees didn't notice the hack until after it was too late. All of the company's computers running Windows software were affected by the malware, which was designed to steal data and then wipe the target machine, which in turn makes the network inoperable. So the studio was forced to shut down its entire computer network to prevent further damage. Now, after the attack was initially identified, employees were advised to turn off Wi-Fi on their devices while the administrators started blocking access to the network. Now, after they shut down their internal network to prevent additional damage, employees were forced to use pen and paper until their network could be rebuilt and hardened. Now, the FBI was enlisted to investigate, as well as a well-known security firm also assisted in the search for the hackers. Now, this case study is a great reminder of how many different ways in which a successful cyber attack can impact an organization, not only operationally and financially, but reputationally. Now, this hack not only leaked the secrets and skeletons of many of the studio executives, it also dragged those revelations into the public eye through weeks of voracious and comprehensive coverage. All right, so time for some more knowledge checks. Let's take a look here. And again, just take a look at the question and do your best to answer it, and we will cover the answer once we get to the end here. So let me go ahead and bring up the first question. All right, which item best describes what can be done to prevent a DOS attack or a denial of service attack? Okay, answers are coming in. So thanks for that, folks. We appreciate the participation. Give it another few moments here. All right, looks like let me go ahead and broadcast the results here. And it looks like about 95% of the group has chosen all of the above, which is correct. Okay, so all of the above is the correct answer for this question, and practicing basic cyber hygiene is really the best defense in mitigating all malicious activity, not just denial of service attacks. Okay, so cyber hygiene includes things like patching and configuration settings and monitoring. I know Adrian mentioned monitoring earlier. Monitoring is really key in knowing and understanding your network and its requirements. So now when possible, we talked about this as well, we want to leverage cloud solutions. The cloud infrastructure is a little less susceptible to DOS and other types of attacks. And then last but not least, understand the warning signs of a DOS attack. And by doing so, this will allow you to respond early and perhaps prevent any major damage that might occur. Okay, let's take a look now at question number 2. All right, communicating an incident to network defenders should occur at which phase of the incident response process? Okay, communicating an incident to network defenders should occur at which phase of the incident response process? All right, answers are coming in. Looking good. All right, give it another moment or two here. Looks like we have some people typing, so appreciate that. All right, let me go ahead and broadcast the results here. And 90% of the group said detection and analysis. So detection and analysis is the correct answer. Now remember we said that an incident begins with the declaration of the incident, which is part of the detection and analysis phase of the incident response lifecycle. Now, the other phases we said were iterative and may continuously occur or evolve over the course of an incident. Now, all federal civilian executive branch agencies should report incidents to CISA. Okay. Now, it is possible that CISA may be involved in different phases of the response lifecycle, but they should be notified when the incident is declared. And this flowchart can be found in the incident and vulnerability response handbook. Or playbook, excuse me, and that is located in the files pod down in the lower left if you want to download that and take it with you today. I would definitely recommend you do that. All right, I think we have time for one more quick question here, so let me go ahead and bring it up. All right, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services DDoS attack in March 2020. What are the precautions that CISA and HHS implemented to mitigate the attack? All right, answers coming in. And looks like we're slowing down here. We've already got broadcast results, so it looks like 99% of you said all of the above, which is the correct answer for this particular knowledge check. So now all of the items listed are precautions that agencies can take to protect their networks from cyber threats, even after the COVID-19 pandemic. So CISA is implementing systems to enhance monitoring of agency systems, and it's also able to issue recommendations to agencies for telework and configurations and beyond. So as with the incident response plans discussed earlier, identifying important telework and other systems is going to help you in knowing where to focus your efforts in the event of an incident. All right, so with that, let me get us back to our presentation here. And Adrian, I'm going to turn it over to you to go over some of the key takeaways for today.
Thank you, John. All right, so I just want to recap some of the takeaways from today. And so in regards to DOS, we mentioned you want to make sure you develop a DOS response plan, which I think many of you said you're in the works or have one already in place. You want to secure your network infrastructure. You want to practice basic network security. You want to maintain a strong network architecture. And if possible, you want to make sure you can leverage the cloud. That way you have unlimited amount of resources in the event that one of your part of the hosting platform goes down, or maybe one of your nodes goes down. You can just fail over to still have that availability for you and your customers. And then you want to understand the warning signs of a DOS attack. Once again, we talk about network monitoring and be able to identify anomalies that are happening on your network. Now, in regards to web and email security, we talked about create established and actionable plans and procedures for managing and responding to a cyber intrusion. You want to establish and practice procedures to address the steps you need to take after an attack. A lot of this isn't the technology involved; it's the procedures and the way that you address it. Being aware, in the military, we talked about in the military we use exercises. That way, people know what to do in the event that the real thing happens. We've already taken the actions to exercise our staff, and so these same things can be implemented within your organizations. Let's see, you want to prioritize data and assets and services warranting the most protection and resources to preserve. You want to assess the nature and scope of the incident to identify the type of damage and assistance that may be needed. You may have to outsource some of this, or maybe call in some SMEs or subject matter experts to help you in the event that something like this happens. And then you want to make sure that any type of remedial efforts that are required are identified as well. And then lastly, you want to establish a pre-existing relationship with the federal law enforcement officials to facilitate any interaction relating to a breach. Along with that, you want to make sure that you have, establishing information sharing within the industry. That way you can have that communication within the community to talk about some of the threats and vulnerabilities that are affecting your industry. I think that's key as well. All right. Now on this slide, you can see some of the resources that are available and you can access for information on web and email server attacks. There's also links available in the web links pod. If you haven't taken a look at those, please take a look at that. It should be in the upper left of your screen, so be sure to check those out as well. Also, if you haven't already downloaded today's presentation, those are available for you in the files presentation pod. And John, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, before you go, this concludes our IMR 105 webinar today, Preventing Web and Email Server Attacks. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and I hope you feel a little more equipped to help protect your organizations from web and email server attacks.